So this video is actually the third in a series of 3. If you missed the first 2, I will put the link below in the description section so you can go back and watch them if you wish to. So just a quick recap, I showed in the first video that actually the wood pile wasn't under the swings at the time that the children went missing, but that instead it was moved there later. That image comes from drone photography from CBC News, and that appeared for the first time in their news stories on the 16th of May, so 2 weeks after the children went missing. I also addressed statements made by Janie with regards to the swings, because in all her audio, she only ever refers to the swings as a location. This is where the children were playing. This is where the swings are. The children were playing near the swings. She never actually says they were playing on the swings. According to the documents, Janie told the RCMP that they were playing on the swings, but she also told them that they were laughing and that the day before they were playing out in the yard through the day and she gave them snacks. Things which are so inconsistent with what she's told us via Facebook. And of course, without hearing the audio from Janie's interview with RCMP, we can't know exactly what she said. We do know that her and Daniel are very good at saying things that only give you kind of enough information to make you think they're telling you something. And then when you go back and listen, you realise that's not what they told you, but they basically made you think that. The swings are the perfect example. In her CBC interview, she was doing so much of standing at the swings, holding the swings and saying, this is where the children were playing. This is where the swings are. She didn't say they were playing on the swings. Same with every bit of audio we have. She refers to them in the area of the swings, but not playing on the swings. It is not uncommon for records of interviews to contain mistakes. And we know that in the documents there are mistakes. For example, the reference to the piece of blanket being found on Lansdowne Station Road as opposed to Lansdowne Road. And yes, if you've been following my channel for a while, you will know that I actually emailed the RCMP directly and double-checked the location as to whether it was Lansdowne Road or Lansdowne Station Road. And they confirmed that it was Lansdowne Road. The other thing which I discussed in yesterday's video was that in actual fact, while Janie and Daniel seem to group Lily and Jack as always doing everything together, always being together, Janie's statements and Belinda's statements show us that they didn't always play together, that they were quite capable of playing independently. Now, obviously, I'm not saying here that they didn't play together. I'm saying that they didn't always play together, but that they would play independently of each other. Janie spoke about Lily playing in the kitchen and making mud pies. She spoke about Jack always digging for worms and bugs and centipedes and all that sort of stuff, and how Lily didn't like bugs, which strongly suggests that she would not be digging for them with him at the same time. I do recommend that you watch my 2 previous videos though, because I have covered all this in detail and I've shown how it all connects. The other significant thing that I mentioned is that, again, Janie is giving us bits of information and telling it to us in a way where basically we are expected to draw the right conclusion. And that is her reference to if these kids get out in the driveway, you're going to hear Lily going, "Come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie." Although she does the whole repetition thing. "Come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie, let's go, Jackie." She says the same thing about if they go up in the woods with her grandchildren. Then she'll hear Lily going, "Come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie," if he's digging for worms and bugs. She does mention one instance, if they're in the yard, when Lily might say, "Come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie, let's play, Jackie," or "Come and play, Jackie." And I pointed out that she uses the same language when she's talking about going for a walk with the children in the woods. And if Jack doesn't want to go, he doesn't want to go. And she will have to say, "Come on, Jack, let's go." We know that Lily likes to emulate people's behaviours. A lot of kids do at that age. So it seems to me that in actual fact, and it makes sense, given how much Lily dotes on Jack and given that there is that age difference of her being the slightly older sister who would be protective of him, it makes more sense to me that perhaps when Janie was hearing Lily saying, "Come on, Jackie, let's go," that she was actually trying to get him out of trouble. That perhaps he's gone into the driveway when he shouldn't have done, or maybe he's getting into the chickens, or maybe when they're up in the woods with the other grandchildren, they're all wanting to head back down to the house and Jack just wants to play with bugs and worms and stuff and won't go. That seems to be far more logical than Lily being, "Hey, let's go and be really, really naughty." Again, this is something that I would recommend that you listen to my previous video because I explain it in a lot of detail. So these things are significant when we look at what we're going to look at in this video, because I think that starts to explain things. Now, there's a lot of other finer details that I did add in my previous two videos, which no doubt I will be referencing through this video because it all connects. So for those people who seem to enjoy just making comments for the sake of arguing, before you argue something and say, "Well, how can you know that?" I would recommend that you do watch my previous two videos. Okay, so with that said, let's just jump in.
My brother, Ron, called me at 8:48 and asked me if I wanted to go to town with him. And I said no. I said, "I'm staying home." I said, "I'm going back to bed." Okay, I went and I laid down. Next thing you know, my dog started barking and the kids were out in the yard. Now, you can see there's two swings where the kids play. My bedroom is right there. I heard the kids.
So I guess we could consider this the official media version, because obviously she's speaking to this alley about it and giving this version of the story. So she's saying that she went back to bed and her dog started barking. And she says the kids were out in the yard. And then she points to the swings and she says that the swings are where the kids play. You'll note that she didn't say that the kids were playing there on that particular day. She's just pointing to the swings as a location where the kids play. We are expected to make that jump. Her brain has prevented her from making the lie that the kids were actually playing at the swings or on the swings, because I don't believe either of those were occurring. Hence the reason she doesn't outwardly say here that they were playing on the swings or at the swings. All she says is this is where the kids play. The reason this statement is important is because this is on camera as well. This is directly in front of an audience. It is harder for a person to lie when they are directly in front of an audience. Again, it just goes back to the simple fact that our brains aren't wired to lie. So they will do anything possible to prevent the lie from happening. And if there is a person there right in front of you, then your brain acknowledges that that person is going to read your body language as well and your facial expressions. So it's going to be even harder for you to lie. So what Janie has said here is that this is where the kids play. Very, very general statement. Not this is where the kids were playing on the Friday morning that they went missing. And when she goes over to the swings, this is where the kids' swings are, this is where they always played. So there is not one moment in this interview where she says that they were playing even in the vicinity of the swings. She doesn't say they were on the swings, she doesn't say they were in the vicinity of the swings. All she says is that she heard them. Her dog barked, she heard them. And this is where they play. Not this is where they were playing. Like I said, this is a face-to-face conversation. So this is when it's harder for her to lie. So all she's done here is the classic Janie thing of hinting at what she wants you to believe. She is directing your focus to the swings so that when she's telling you this is where the children play, I heard the children outside, your brain automatically goes to that they were playing on the swings. But she hasn't actually said that.
That's all I can tell you is from what I told you. My brother called me at 8:48. We talked for 2 minutes, 59 seconds. After that, I laid down. My dog barked because Lily and Jack were here where the swings are.
Again, she's saying her dog barked because Lily and Jack were here where the swings are. She didn't say they were playing on the swings. They were here where the swings are. I'm going to come back to that because I'm not convinced that they were actually anywhere near the swings. But I'll come back to that in a little while.
I laid there for a little while playing on Facebook. I dozed off. I heard the dog bark. The kids were outside. I heard the kids. And then after that, I didn't hear nothing. Everything just went completely silent.
This time there's not even a location. This time she simply heard the dog bark and the kids were outside and she heard the kids.
The dog barked when he heard them outside and then it went completely silent.
In this instance, she doesn't even hear the kids herself. She doesn't give a location. She just says the dog barked when he heard the kids outside.
So that's another thing I can't understand is if I never heard the kids running. If the kids were running out of the yard, out of the fence, my dog would have still been barking. As I said, because of Lily's loud scream and hollering. So, as I said, I heard the kids out here in the yard by the swings. And then I heard completely silence.
Now what she's saying here actually isn't logical. She's telling us that she never heard the kids running. And if the kids were running out of the yard, out of the fence, because she can't remember what she's meant to say there, that her dog would have still been barking. I'll double back to that in a moment, but I just want to point out that she again says that she heard the kids out here in the yard by the swings. So she's not even trying to say they were on the swings now. She's saying they were in the yard by the swings. Now, here's the thing. Let's talk about dogs hearing. Now, my house is a block and a half from the highway. There's a roundabout down on the highway. And when my brother-in-law comes around that roundabout, my dogs get excited and they start doing their excited bark and they go and wait by the front door. I don't hear the car till it pulls up outside of the house. And the only reason I hear it is because the dogs have already signalled that Jamie's on the way up the road and are waiting up by the door, so they're no longer barking. They're just sitting by the door waiting. But apparently Janie's got better hearing than a dog, because several times she has said that she heard the kids in the yard and then her dog barked. So her story isn't linear, because you would expect the dog to hear the children first, and therefore the dog should be barking once it hears the children. But here's the other thing. So she's saying her dog's barking at the children. Her dog barks at the children. Clearly it's something that is disturbing for Janie. It is a cause of distress. It is a sensory experience that she does not enjoy. And I would imagine that if you're in a teeny tiny RV with a dog and your dog is barking, then it would be something that is not so enjoyable, because you are in a small enclosed space with a barking dog. You wouldn't be able to hear yourself think. Which goes to Janie's comments that she could hear the children outside, but not only could she hear them outside, but she could actually pinpoint their exact location. She could hear them outside by the swings. Now, my dogs are generally well behaved, except of course for the pup who wants to chew everything in sight. But for the most part, they're not obnoxious, unless they hear more than one person talking outside. So, or if they hear a particular neighbour who could talk underwater with marbles in her mouth. There's something about her voice that drives them nuts. So anytime they hear her, even if she is in her house with the screen door open, then it drives Mouse nuts. But for the most part, my dogs aren't too bothered by too much noise outside, unless there are people talking loudly. And here's the thing. If it's people on the top side of my house, I know that that's where the noise is coming from, because process of elimination. My dogs will bark and either run to the bathroom or run to the back door to be let out so they can bark some more. But if it's the bottom side of my house or out on the road, I wouldn't be able to tell you which location that was until my dogs stop barking. The impression I get here is that Janie's dog will bark until the children go quiet. So my first question is, how does she pinpoint the exact location of the children outside without looking when she is in a confined space with a barking dog? I'd be surprised that she can even hear the children outside. But let's talk about this illogical statement. So she says, I never heard the kids running. If the kids were running out of the yard or out of the gate or out of the fence, like I said, you can't decide, my dog would have still been barking. So she's saying that the presence of the children, wherever they are, is going to cause the dog to bark continuously. So she's basically saying that if we're to believe what she's saying literally, she's saying the children evaporated from the swings, from in the area of the swings. because that's where they were when her dog was barking, and then everything went silent. Had they moved from there, her dog would have been still barking. She's saying she didn't hear them go anywhere. And if they had gone anywhere, her dog would have still been barking. It's illogical and impossible, because the children did not just evaporate from playing near the swings. I'm pretty sure we can eliminate the possibility of Scotty beaming them up, or of some portal opening up and them going through that portal. Which means at some point in time, they had to leave that location that she's talking about. The location being near the swings, around the swings. So what she's saying there is not logical. We're supposed to believe that when the children are in the yard, her dog barks. But apparently, it stopped barking while they were at the swings and it didn't bark again. Explain that. You could say, well, something happened at the swings. I don't think it did. And I will continue to explain as we go along.
My dog usually sits in the window. But that morning, my dog was sleeping with me in bed.
Okay, so we saw in the CBC interview her dog sitting in the window. And I think Belinda mentioned that she saw the dog sitting in the window when she was there. So the question is, what is the significance of her dog sitting in the window if it responds to noise regardless? This dog is triggered by sounds. She has made that really, really clear. So it wouldn't matter if the dog was sitting in the window, surely.
I have a board up over my window. I did not see them because the board was closed.
Okay, this is the significant thing that a lot of people are overlooking. Janie is saying, she's making it clear, she did not see the children on Friday morning because she has a board over her window. And she says she puts that there through winter. This is after saying that her dog normally sits in the window. But we'll come back to that in a moment. But she's made it quite clear that she did not see the children. So how is it with a dog, you're in a confined space, your dog is barking. Apparently your dog does not stop barking until the children are back inside by the sounds of it. And yet she can pinpoint the exact location that the children are. Allegedly, they were out by the swings. They weren't playing on the swings. She's made it clear in all these statements they were by the swings or near the swings or in that area. Except, like I said, when she's doing that interview with Ali. And then she doesn't even say the children were playing in that location on the Friday. She says this is where they play. And that's the thing that stands out for me, like I said, because of the brain being less likely to throw out these lies when you are face to face. So what is the significance of the dog being in the window? Well, what she's saying here is that her dog responds to the sound of the children's voices. But by talking about her dog being in the window here, she is introducing the idea that the children aren't always noisy outside. They're not always yelling and screaming. She's establishing here that if the kids are outside and they're not yelling and screaming, but the dog can see them through the window, it's going to react. This ties in with her comment of, if the kids got into the driveway, we would hear them. My dog would bark. But now she's establishing that if they went out onto the driveway and they weren't yelling, her dog would see them. So it seems like her dog barks at sound and if it sees someone moving. There's a story that she tells about a bear. And if her dog sees the bear, it goes berserk and barks, and the bear hightails it out of there. But interestingly, she's given us two stories here. First, she says she didn't see the children because there was a board over her window. But she's also establishing that the dog would normally be in the window, but it wasn't because it was in bed with her. So right there, she's telling us if someone is in the vicinity of her RV, her dog is going to react, whether they're making noise or not. And she's saying that her dog didn't react because it was in bed with her. She's saying, you know, basically the dog didn't react to wherever the children went because it wasn't in the window. The dog doesn't need to be in the window to hear the children. So here she's talking about a visual response, the dog seeing movement and reacting. But most importantly is the fact that she is establishing here that when the dog sees these children through the window, it reacts. This is a known behaviour. She's giving things away here and she doesn't even realise. There's some major leakage going on and that will become apparent in just a moment.
And when you have to call your kids, or Jack and Lily's mother, and tell them that Jack has his boots off and Jack has his coats off, does that tell you that Malaya was watching the kids? So don't come down on me because they weren't my grandchildren.
Yes, I have gone off at a tangent and I will explain why. So we've heard this so many times where she's saying that basically when the children come out and Jack takes off his boots and he takes off his coat, she has to let Malaya know that he's taken off his boots and he's taken off his coat. Now she is specifically talking about Jack taking his coat off and Jack taking his boots off. Jack would be wearing boots and a coat in winter. So she's talking about during winter, when the kids are outside, in their boots and their coats, they're rugged up, and Jack takes his coat off, she has to phone Malaya, she has to call Malaya and tell Malaya that Jack has his boots and his coat off. But she's just said that she puts a board over her window in winter to keep the cold out. So that would suggest that maybe she's outside watching them. But it seems pretty clear that she doesn't do that. When you listen to the statements she's made, and I've done this in another video, she only physically goes outside to watch the children when her grandchildren are there. Otherwise, she's telling us about the fact that she hears them outside of her RV. So how is it that she knows then that Jack has got his boots off and Jack has got his coat off? And is Malaya really that bad a mother that she doesn't notice?
And my dog sits in the front windshield of my RV all the time during the day. So nobody comes in my yard without my dog letting me know.
Okay, Janie's just given us some really, really important information here. She's actually, it's leakage, which it's one of those instances where Janie hasn't thought things through in terms of connecting all the lines and realising what she is giving away. So she's just told us that her dog will sit in the front windscreen of her RV all day and that it will react if anyone comes near the RV. So she's talking about the visual response. She's not talking about it reacting to someone being noisy. She's talking about it reacting if it sees someone in the vicinity of the RV. Now, she has said to us that she heard the children outside, but she couldn't hear them because there was a board over her window. She's also said that when the children allegedly went missing, the dog didn't react because instead of being in the window where it normally would be, it was in bed with her. Well, it wasn't in the window that's boarded up. So she is referring to her dog sitting in the front window, the windscreen of her RV. She has just told us that basically her dog will sit in the front windscreen of her RV. She's told us that her dog would have reacted to Lily and Jack had it been sitting in the window. Meaning this is something established, something she knows. This is a established behaviour with her dog. When it sees Lily and Jack through the window, it reacts. Janie has just told us that these children would get out into the driveway. That this is something that they would do. Because she has explained that that is what her dog would react to. It reacts to their sound, or if they're not being noisy, it would react to seeing them outside the RV. It can only see them outside the RV through the front windscreen. Let's go back to Jack and his boots and his coat. Janie puts a board over her window in the winter to keep the cold out. So she couldn't see Lily and Jack playing on the swings or playing near the swings or in the area of the swings, whatever you wish it to be, because there was a board there. And yet she's talking about Jack, clearly in winter because we're talking about a coat and boots, taking his coat and boots off outside, and she's the one that has to tell Malaya. Like I said, we know she didn't bother going outside to watch those kids unless they were with her grandchildren. So why did she feel that it was her responsibility to tell Malaya that Jack was outside with his boots and coat off? Because honestly, it seems to me that Janie would only bother with that if it was some way of making Malaya feel bad about her parenting. Like I said, you would think that with a board over the window of her RV, she wouldn't be able to see that Jack is outside with his boots and coat off, unless he's in the driveway. And if they are in the driveway playing, there's no window on the side of that trailer, meaning that if they were playing in the driveway, Malaya wouldn't be able to see them. That's why Janie had to let her know that Jack had his boots and coat off, because she knew Malaya wouldn't see them because they were playing in the driveway out of sight. You're probably thinking, how did you get there? What makes you think that they're going to be out there playing on the driveway, aside from her admitting that her dog was with her, so it didn't see them going out into the driveway?
Yeah, here. I plan on putting a pool up this year for the kids. You need level ground for a pool. That's what I was doing. I was leveling out the ground to set up the pool.
And this is the Thursday.
This is Thursday.
Right.
Friday, all the investigators, search and rescue and everything, right around here was where they found the only footprint.
This is where the boot.
This is where I was raking that night. That's where the boot print was found, in the mud where I was raking.
Now, we've commented all along that we believe that boot print was planted in the driveway. But what if it wasn't? Remember Janie's story that Jack likes to dig for worms, and he likes to look under rocks and lift up boards looking for worms and bugs. And she claims that Thursday afternoon that him and Lily were here between the cubby house and the woodshed, digging for worms and looking under boards. And she claims that Jack went, "Look, I found a worm, I found a centipede." The thing is, this is a heavy traffic area. Even with the grass having come up over a couple of months, you can see that that is compacted clay. There's a few rocks over there by the fence, but they're not loose rocks. They're not the sort of rocks that you can flip over and find worms and bugs under. Those sort of rocks need to be big, loose rocks that are going to hold the moisture underneath them. Jack would need a crowbar to dig into that soil there to find worms. And then he would still have to dig down quite deep because of how heavily compacted it is and because of how dry it is. Yes, there were 2 boards beside the cubby house that maybe they could have lifted and looked under. But, I question whether that would be possible. Lily's not going to lift the boards for Jack because she might get attacked by a bug. She'd have to scream and run inside, meaning that Jack would have had to have moved those boards on his own. Maybe? But at the same time, how long is that going to last? I said that in the previous video. Even if he was strong enough to lift those boards, he wouldn't have found much under them because it would have been too dry and the soil would have been too heavy. So let's go back to the driveway. All along the side of the driveway, you have all these loose rocks that you could be decent sized rocks that you could lift up, and you can see that it's a bit damp there. Perfect spot to be hunting for worms and bugs. And Janie said she was raking in the mud. Where do you look for worms? In the mud. So, in this version, she never even mentions working on the fence. But she is talking about raking in the mud on the driveway. She's talking about, this is Thursday, but like I said, I believe everything happened on Thursday evening. And again, her stories collide anyway, because she has them Thursday also doing exactly the same thing that they were doing Friday morning, allegedly. Although instead of just saying they were playing near the swings, they were digging for bugs and worms and stuff. If you were a little 4-year-old boy, you were obsessed with bugs and worms, then you're not going to search in an area where you're not going to find them. You're going to go to the locations where you are likely to find them. Janie was raking in the mud. Perfect spot to search for worms. The bank over there has got lots of loose soil that you could dig into. And it's damp. And it's got lots of loose rocks. The reason why Janie knows that her dog would have reacted if the children had have got out that gate and down the driveway is because it was clearly a regular occurrence. Her dog sits in the window all day. It wouldn't see them through the board on the window, but she specifically said her dog was in bed with her. So it didn't react. Well, it would have reacted to sound. So she's specifically showing us here it didn't see the children through the window because it wasn't at the window. She's telling us that the children were in the driveway, but that her dog didn't see them because it was in bed with her. She's telling us, again, she's mixed her Thursday and Friday all together. Because like I said, I believe this happened on Thursday. And instead of trying to come up with a new narrative that is completely different to Thursday afternoon, she's just got it all jumbled in her head. She's told us that Jack was looking for worms and centipedes, and that this happened when she was raking. She's showing us where she was raking, out on the driveway. How can he show her his centipede and his worm if he's round between the woodshed and the cubby house? He had to have been in the driveway when Janie was raking. And he showed her these things. The reason why Janie had to tell Malaya that Jack had his boots off and his coat off was because Jack was in the driveway where Malaya wouldn't see him. And Janie realised that, and it was a chance for her to get a one-upmanship thing going here with Malaya. I'm going to contact you and let you know that your son's in the driveway where you can't see him. And he's got his coat off. Which makes you a bad mother because he's got his coat off and you can't see him because he's where he shouldn't be. So what if that boot print in the driveway wasn't planted? What if that boot print was there because Jack was looking in the mud where Janie had been raking to see if there were any worms? And as he was leaning down, he was putting more weight on that foot, hence the boot print. This pile of rocks behind Janie, they weren't there on the Saturday when Belinda was there. They were put up after the children allegedly went missing. They weren't some sort of driveway feature. They were put there after the children went missing. After the Saturday when Belinda and everyone were there searching. They look like a can to me. Cans have one of two purposes. One, the most commonly known one, is as a marker. So you use them to mark a path. This is where the path is. They can also be used to mark a significant location for other reasons. In some cultures, a can will be used to mark a location where someone met their end, so to say, because you know what YouTube's like. Now, if we look at this entire driveway, not only is there a wealth of rocks along the side of that driveway that Jack could turn over looking for worms and bugs, and the only mud that could be found is on that driveway. But the wood pile, like I said, that wasn't moved until after the children went missing. And where's one of the best places to find bugs and things? In a wood pile. Might not have been able to lift those boards, but could have easily been picking up bits of wood and looking under them. So other than the mention of the dog sitting in the front windscreen and the dog essentially reacting, if it was in the front windscreen, reacting if anyone came near her RV, is there anything else that Janie says that could make us believe that, yes, maybe Jack did go out of the yard when he wanted to search for worms and bugs.
I had my granddaughter down digging worms for the chickens. And he would come down there and he would grab every worm that he could see.
She had her granddaughter down looking for worms, and he would come down there and grab every worm he could see. Let's talk about the topography here. Basically, you are headed uphill as you go further through this property. To be going down looking for worms for the chickens means down towards the road or down towards this fence area here where the photographer is. Whichever way you look at it, down is heading towards the front of the property. And she's saying that's where her and her granddaughter would dig for worms. And then Jack would come and he would collect the worms. So is Janie inadvertently telling us that Jack and Lily used to get out of the yard? Is she telling us here essentially that Jack would go out of the yard so he could search for worms and bugs? Because how often does she bring this story up? This is a significant story. Have you ever stopped to question why it is that she keeps talking about Jack and worms and bugs? And I had wondered what the heck was going on, because the location she's telling us between the woodshed and the cubby really doesn't seem like a suitable location for digging for worms and bugs. But if you come out onto the driveway, then that's where you're going to find the muddy areas, that's where you're going to find the loose rocks. And if you start heading down towards the road, well then that's probably where you're going to find the worms. So, remember how Janie kept inadvertently saying about them getting out the fence as opposed to out through the gate? Well, there's an interesting statement in the documents that's bothered me from the first time I read it. Now, I'm sure that what she was trying to say here was that in terms of where she saw Daniel up on that track up above the property. But I think the way it's come out, to me, is leakage and in fact suggests something else. Because it actually doesn't make sense to me. It's not logical. Janie was concerned about the timeline because there was no way the kids could have walked from the yard up to the road where Daniel was in the vehicle without her seeing them. Now, according to the timeline that they gave the RCMP, when Janie saw Malaya said the children had been gone for 20 minutes. Now, the timeline gets tricky here because on one hand, Daniel was running up through the woods to check the little cabin/fort when Malaya was standing on the driveway. And that's when Malaya told Janie. But the other version of the story is that Daniel had already done that and gone out in the car. But the point is that according to all of them, the children had been gone some time before they suddenly realised they were missing. The distance up that track through the woods, up to the track up the back, the road up the back, is something like 100 metres. I measured it, I can't remember what it is now, but it's not a huge distance. If Janie got up there around the same time that Daniel got up there in the vehicle, well, if the kids had a head start on them, yes, they could have got up there before them. So it's not a logical thing to be saying. Unless she's referring to the fact that the kids got out onto the driveway and her dog didn't see them, didn't react to them being in the driveway, and they headed down to the road, which was where Daniel's car was. Daniel completely vanishes from the timeline on Thursday afternoon. He goes and finds his tools, and then he helps Janie put up 2 rails. That is according to Janie. You can see that that fence was not finished. Daniel claims that he was out there till nearly on dark, helping Janie with the fence. And yet Janie is quite specific that he was there just to hold the rails so she could nail them in place. And essentially she was doing the rest of the fencing. But even if he helped Janie right up until the time when she went in for supper, he is still absent from the timeline up until midnight, when he allegedly flicks the light on in the children's bedroom and they're asleep under the covers. He claims he went in on dark, but he didn't see the children. His timeline doesn't fit with Janie's or Malaya's timeline at all. And the children don't really fit into the timeline on Thursday afternoon either. So is Janie actually giving things away here? Is she basically letting us know that the children were in the driveway? And that they got into the driveway a different way than going through the gateway, where her dog would have reacted. And they somehow ended up on the road where Daniel's car was. Remember, she said that they went through the fence? If they got out the fence? Not if they got out through the gate, if they got out the fence. If they exited that yard down the bottom where the fence is, where the fence was unfinished, then the dog probably wouldn't react, because they wouldn't be in the vicinity of the RV. Janie claims that the children were scared of dogs. We know that's not the case. They were totally fine with Cindy and Wade's dog, meaning they were clearly only scared of Janie's dog. Well, given that the dog apparently barks any time they go near, or if they make a noise, then yes, maybe they were scared of that particular dog because it was noisy and aggressive. In which case, if you're going to go hunting for worms and there's this nice opening in the fence that you can go through without disturbing the dog, so you don't have to have this scary dog barking at you, that's where you're going to go. Janie talks about going in for supper on Thursday night. She says she doesn't know what time the children went inside or when they went to bed, meaning that they were still outside when she went in for supper. She also claims that she blames herself for what happened to the children. Now, I'm just going to go with Thursday here because I think we can be pretty certain that's when it happened. Were the children supposed to go in when she went inside? Did she allow them to be in the driveway while Jack was searching for worms and centipedes? Because she was already in the driveway. And did she tell them, you've got to go inside now, when she went into her RV? Or did she just leave them there? And maybe Lily realised that they needed to go inside because it was getting dark. Hence, Lily was doing the, come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie. It seems to me that something happened on the Thursday And whatever that something was that happened, it occurred in the driveway. The fact that Daniel is absent from the Thursday narrative makes me think that it does all point towards Daniel.
I heard them out in the yard here Thursday afternoon. And when I heard them out, my dog started barking. My dog tells me when the kids are in the yard.
If you muted out the Thursday afternoon part, the rest of that sounds exactly like Friday morning. She heard them out in the yard. Her dog told her they were out in the yard.
I heard them Friday morning. I swear on a Bible. Better than that, I swear on my father's grave. I heard them Friday morning. So the kids were here Friday morning.
Wow, how persuasive do you need to be? I heard them Friday morning. She's really going heavy on that, making sure that people understand she heard them Friday morning. She's even going to swear on her father's grave. Well, the moment someone starts feeling the need to be that persuasive, then I don't believe them. Especially when I've already heard them saying, I heard them Thursday afternoon. Her Thursday afternoon and Friday morning are interchangeable. And it seems that Lily and Jack were also playing, allegedly, in the same location. Now, someone who never seems to get quite enough attention is Malaya. So I'm going to give Malaya a little bit of attention here.
The altercation. My brother, me and Justin were out on the four-wheeler. We were up at the pipeline. We were coming out at the road called the Matheson Road. Malaya called me on my phone. She called me at 3:32. I didn't answer because we were talking to a lady on her four-wheeler with a child. Then she called me back at 5:39. I answered the phone. She told me to get back here to the trailer. I said, what's up? She said, I can't tell you over the phone. So I came back here. Me and Justin came back here to the trailer. Marlea was standing on the edge of the driveway, crying her eyes out. I went up and I put my arms around her and said, please don't tell me that they found the kids dead.
Now, there's a few things here that bother me. First of all, there's this suggestion from Janie that Malaya called her and she didn't answer the phone because she was already talking to somebody else. And it sounds like it was like 2 hours later before Malaya finally got to her. And she said, what's up? And Malaya said, I can't tell you over the phone. So what's problematic with that for me already is that every account other than Janie's has Janie present for the altercation in the driveway. She was a part of it. She was involved. But on top of that, she's out there looking for two missing children. And Malaya, the mother of the children, the person who would probably be the first person to be told if the children was found, rings her while she's up on the pipeline. And she doesn't answer because she's talking to some random stranger. And then when she does answer, she asks Malaya, what's up? What's up? You're looking for two missing children. The mother of the children ring you and you ask, what's up? Wouldn't your first question be, have they found them? But instead she asks Malaya, what's up? And Malaya's response is, I can't tell you over the phone. So then Janie goes back. And then her first response is, please don't tell me they found the kids deceased. So the first reaction is, what's up? And then by the time she gets back, it's, please don't tell me they found the kids deceased. There was no have they found the kids when Malaya rang? There was no answering the phone immediately when Malaya rang. Now, sure, she says that Malaya was on the side of the driveway crying. And that is the reason she's given for saying what she said. But if things were that stressful, if things were that horrible that by the time she got there Malaya was standing on the side of the driveway crying, then surely when Malaya rang her, she would have heard emotion in Malaya's voice then too. But she didn't ask her then, don't tell me they found the children deceased. She just asked, what's up? Like it's just a regular day. Like, she's just sitting there and Malaya's phone rings. Oh, I wonder what Malaya's ringing me for. There's nothing going on in the world. Hey, what's up? Apparently there was no thought there that Malaya could be phoning her in response to something having been discovered about the children, that they'd been found. And in fact, Janie waited 2 hours before getting back to Malaya. Now, if you were out searching, you wouldn't want to be out searching for another 2 hours if the children had been found. If you're genuinely concerned, you'd answer the phone straight away. And the first thing that would be out of your mouth would be, have they found them? But Janie doesn't say that. There's a few different times when she brings up this altercation in the driveway, or the altercation at the end of the driveway.
The the RCMP came and asked me what was going on, if there was a fight. I said there was no fight. I just ordered them off my property. He took me aside. He has it all video cammed. He took me aside and asked me what happened. I said, Malaya, exactly the same thing. Malaya called me. I came back here to the trailer. I thought the kids were dead. Then Haley and this other girl, I think it was Shelby, I can't be 100% right, started shooting off. I told him to get off my property. After the altercation at the end of the driveway.
So she repeatedly describes it as the altercation at the end of the driveway. She claims that she wasn't there when it occurred and that Malaya rang her and said, you need to get back here, essentially. But she didn't actually think anything about the children when Malaya rang her. She was like, what's up? And Malaya's like, I can't tell you over the phone. Get back here. Still no question of, has something happened to the children? That only occurs when she gets back to the property. She tells us that when she gets back to the property, Malaya's standing on the side of the driveway in tears. And she says that twice. And she also says, and she reiterates it when she's talking about what she said to the officer. She says, and I quote, please don't tell me they found the kids and their DEAD. It just is really, really odd. And yeah, Janie does say a lot of odd things. But a lot of the time when she says odd things, it's because there's leakage. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break from Janie's voice now, because I'm going to play 2 statements that Belinda made.
Malaya was pretty, I'm not sure if it's shock, but she was very flat, non-emotional flat. I put it down to shock, that she just didn't know what to do, and she kept saying she didn't know what to do. She was totally, a good way to put it was, she looked totally lost. She had Meadow on her hip. She was holding Meadow, and she looked totally lost.
So Belinda was there the same day that the altercation on the driveway occurred. And she's talking about what Malaya was like that day. She seemed like she was in shock. Flat, non-emotional flat. She says, I put it down to just shock. And then she says twice, she looked totally lost. This is day 2. The initial confusion, distress of we can't find the children should have progressed to more of an anxiety, a stress, a need to do something, a frustration because things weren't happening fast enough. What Belinda is describing is the reaction of someone who has suffered loss. What she's describing here sounds like the typical self-preservation mechanism that exists in our brains. That when something so cataclysmic occurs, such as losing a child, that in order to protect us from a complete utter meltdown, the brain just shuts off the emotions. Now, I can imagine Malaya finally becoming emotional because of the altercation in the driveway, because the anger would have tipped over into that full-on emotion. The anger over whatever it was that was going on was enough to trigger her emotions again. Hence the reaction, hence the reason she had that panic attack in the ambulance when they went to the briefing. The anger triggered the grief emotions. But there's a few things I want to point out here. Janie repeatedly refers to this altercation as the altercation at the end of the driveway. Now, we know this occurred. We know Malaya was there when it occurred. We know that it triggered emotions in Malaya to the point where she ended up leaving with her mother and privatising her Facebook and ghosting everyone. So I'm not saying that didn't occur. But the thing is, Janie is referring to 2 events, I believe. Because while she's talking about the altercation at the end of the driveway, she refers to Malaya standing on the side of the driveway. She's got 2 events mixed up here. Malaya wasn't standing at the end of the driveway where the altercation was. Malaya was standing on the side of the driveway, crying. And this is why we get this odd statement from Janie. Don't tell me they found the children and they are not alive. Because her brain has leaked a truth here. Her brain is telling us that whatever happened to these children occurred on the side of the driveway. This whole thing where Thursday night merges into Friday and she comes out of her RV and Malaya's just standing there on the side of the driveway. It's all morphed together. Janie has this shocking habit of twisting all her timelines together so that Thursday afternoon, Saturday afternoon and Friday morning are all knotted together so much that you can't even begin to figure out where to unravel it. This is why she says that Malaya rang her and she said, "What's up?" I don't think she's referring to when she was out on the pipeline. We've been told that Janie allegedly was going to go out on Thursday night. Now, that's hearsay. But what if there is some truth in that? What if Janie did go out Thursday night and Malaya rang her and said, can you come back here? Well, if you've gone out, especially Janie, can you imagine how cranky she would be? Especially if it came to Malaya. She doesn't like Malaya. So what if she went out Thursday night, gets a phone call from Malaya, and her response is, what's up? Because she's gone out. She doesn't want Malaya interrupting her night out. Malaya's like, I can't tell you over the phone. And Malaya and Janie gets back and finds Malaya standing on the side of the driveway in tears. Janie's timeline has always been a big tangled mess. And the thing is, it seems like a lot of it seems to be in the wrong places. And I've already done that series where I spoke about Janie in the driveway and how her narrative for Thursday and Friday seemed to have everything happening in the one location. Well, now we introduce the altercation on the Saturday, which occurred at the end of the driveway. But Malaya wasn't at the end of the driveway, she was on the side of the driveway, in tears. We have Janie saying that she couldn't see the children playing through her window because there was a board there. But she's telling us that she was the one who would have to ring Malaya if Jack got his coat and his boots off. And yet, if there was a board there in winter because it was cold, and like I said, we know she didn't go out there unless her grandchildren were there. So she would only have been able to see him through the front windscreen of her RV, meaning he would have been on the driveway. If Lily's "come on Jackie, let's go Jackie" was more about trying to get him to go back where he's meant to be, as opposed to trying to convince him to go play with her, when we know that he was quite happy digging for worms, she was quite happy making mud pies in the little kitchen, or playing with her dolls. Yes, sure they would play together, clearly. But it seems like they were both also quite satisfied to play on their own at times. Janie says that if anyone comes near her RV, the dog's always in that front window, in the windscreen, and will react and tell her someone's there. But she keeps going back to talking about if the children get out the fence. Well, if they went out through that fence, chances are they would be far enough away that the dog's not going to react. And if you were looking for worms and bugs, wouldn't you go out onto the driveway where there's mud, where there's loose rocks? Wouldn't you go down to the wood pile where there's going to be bugs? Has Janie, in her muddled up, confused way, told us what really happened?
Only I am showing you what happened and where it happened. That's the only difference of me talking to you guys now.
Of course, the big catch with all this is that given that Janie couldn't do a polygraph test, I'm guessing that she also wouldn't be much use in terms of interviews, in terms of getting straight answers and a clear linear timeline. But if you can untangle all those knots in her narrative and try and put them together into a linear timeline, that could give you a starting point for further interrogation of Daniel and Malaya. My observation from listening to everything Janie has said as opposed to listening to everything Daniel has said, is that while Daniel is quite happy to just make out outright lies, which you saw in a recent video I did, where he gave that turkey guy this super, super elaborate story about the extra blanket, the second blanket that they found. And yet when I emailed RCMP and said, was there a second blanket? They're like, no. There was 2 pieces of blanket found, the one in the rubbish, the one on the tree. There was not a second blanket. And yet when you listen to Daniel's story with the turkey guy, you could almost believe it, because he just goes so far with that story. Janie, on the other hand, she doesn't seem to make up stories. She just seems to mix her stories up. And she makes suggestions and lets the listener go the rest of the way with the suggestion. We have that one statement in the documents where she allegedly said that they were playing on the swings. We didn't get that till August. Before then, we had already come to the conclusion, based on Janie's statements, that the children were playing on the swings. But then now when we go back through the audio, we can see that actually she was just pointing us in that direction. And we took the bait, hook, line and sinker. She never said the children were playing on the swings. The CBC interview, where she's holding the swing and saying, these are the swings. This is where the children would play. Not this is where they were playing, or they were playing on the swings. This is where they would play. This is a location where they would play. And yet it worked. We ran with it and thought she was talking about them playing on the swings. There is no audio at all where she says they were playing on the swings. And yet we all fell for that, because that's what she was pointing us all towards. With Daniel, it's like he started off with 3 different puzzles, and he's grabbed a handful of puzzle pieces from each of those boxes, put them in a new box and said, here you go, build a picture from this. And you're never going to create that full picture because you don't have a full puzzle in there. And as you start putting pieces together, he comes along with another puzzle and he puts another handful of pieces from a completely different puzzle in there. So you're continually trying to put together a puzzle that's never going to go together, because all the pieces are from different boxes. So you're only getting a little bit of the puzzle. You're only getting a little bit of one picture and a little bit of the next picture. But you're never getting a full picture. Janie, on the other hand, she's got 3 puzzles. 3 complete puzzles, whacked them all in the one box together and gone, here you go. There's 3 puzzles here, 3 complete puzzles here. You've just got to figure out which pieces belong with which puzzle. So what I've done in the last 3 videos is I've tried to put Janie's 3 puzzles together to complete the 3 separate pictures. And I don't know, because I haven't created the full picture. But there's certainly things that point towards basically the story that we've been given being essentially a bastardization of the truth. It seems to me that when all this began, Daniel and Malaya created the script, and originally they stuck to the script. But then Daniel decided to do a bit of ad-libbing. And it seems that they gave Janie the script, but she's not very good at working with a script. And she's got all confused. And she's forgotten what she's meant to be saying. And it's all just got jumbled up. And somewhere amongst all those things she's said is some truth. Do I know for certain that maybe Jack got into the driveway looking for worms on Thursday night? No. I'm speculating based on things that Janie has said. Do I know for certain that Lily saying, "Come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie," is more about her trying to get him out of trouble, trying to get him to do the right thing, as opposed to wanting him to go and get into mischief with her and play with her? No, I don't, but I do know that everything Janie has said about Lily, about Jack, and about Malaya has been designed to shine a rather bad light on them. I do know that Daniel and Janie have gone out of the way to victim blame Lily and Jack, meaning that everything that they have said about Lily and Jack, we need to question the message that they are giving us and ask, what else could this mean? There's no doubt about how strong the bond was between these two. When you take that into account, given the age difference, given that Lily liked to play the mother role or the grandmother role, wearing Belinda's hat and glasses, or making hot chocolate and mud pies in the play kitchen. Lily was the sort of little girl who learned through modelled behaviour. And we've heard Janie saying how when they were in the woods, the only way to get Jack to go was to take him by the hand and say, "Come on, Jack, let's walk." Sounds a lot like, come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie, let's go, Jackie." If Janie used to take her granddaughter down to get worms for the chickens, then Jack would have learned that the best place to find worms would be to go down and look in that location. Janie doesn't say where it is, but when we look at the lay of the property, down to me suggests down towards the road, not in the yard. It certainly seems that the muddier spots where you are likely to find worms all seem to be out on the driveway. And while I think many of us thought that the boot print in the driveway was planted to give the impression that the children had wandered off down the driveway, what if it wasn't? What if it was there because of a little 4-year-old boy looking for worms? And maybe that gave someone the idea of putting a boot print up on the pipeline. Because that one, I do think that was planted. Either it was planted or it is unrelated. But is it possible that the one in the driveway did actually get there because these two got out into the driveway because Jack was looking for bugs and worms and Lee was telling him to come back? Come on, Jackie, let's go. Would they be too afraid of getting in trouble with Daniel if they went out onto the driveway? Given that it appears that he was not the nicest stepfather? Maybe. But Daniel has no timeline for Thursday afternoon and Thursday evening. Maybe he wasn't there. Maybe because he wasn't there, they strayed a little bit further because they thought they wouldn't get into trouble. And they went out onto the driveway because Daniel wasn't there to yell at them. Daniel wasn't there to yell at Jack for getting into something that he shouldn't have been getting into, for being somewhere that he shouldn't have been. So they felt a little bit more confident. Yes, there's a fair bit of speculation here, but the speculation is based on knowledge of the people that I'm discussing. The speculation is based on analysis of Janie's language and of leakage in Janie's language. The speculation is also based on understanding the psychology of the players here. Janie's psychology, the psychology of these two siblings who were less than 2 years apart in age and who most of the time only had each other. So yes, it is speculation, but it is speculation based on facts, speculation based on analysis, speculation based on psychological profiling. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just putting it out there for people to consider. So on that note, this has been a particularly long video, so I'm going to finish off there. Thank you for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit that like button and please leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. So thank you, and I will catch you in the next one.
I begin to wonder